across the economy, everybody is being hit with surging prices. This has barely begun. We've only scratched the surface on the price increases that consumers are in store for. But what I want to talk about now is some of the ridiculous policies that are being considered, not only in Washington, but on the state level, to try to combat this inflation problem, but which, of course, like all government solutions, will make the problem worse. Because the problem with government solutions is every government solution always involves more government. And therein lies the problem, because it's generally governments that are either creating the problem or exacerbating it. And then when you come up with a government program, it inevitably makes whatever problem they've either created or they're trying to solve worse. And part of the problem, too, is oftentimes government isn't really interested in solving problems. Its real goal is to perpetuate problems, because the bottom line on government is the problem that it always wants to solve is how to make itself bigger. Because what governments want is to grow, meaning politicians always want their agency to be bigger. They want more power, they want more clout, they want a bigger budget, they want more bureaucrats under their control. So every government agency or department is incentivized to get as big as possible. And therefore, if you have a government agency that is charged with solving a problem, the last thing the agency wants to do is solve the problem, because now it no longer has a justification to exist. What the agency wants is to make the problem worse, so now it has more of a justification. Because let's say you have a government agency that's supposed to eliminate poverty. Well, the last thing they want to do is make themselves obsolete. They don't want no more poverty, because then, okay, we can shut down the program. We don't need it anymore. Problem solved. No, they want more poverty. The more poverty they can create, then they can go back to Congress and say, look how much more poverty there is. We need a bigger budget. We need more programs because you put us in charge of solving poverty. And my God, there's so much more poverty now. We need to be much bigger, because now there's even more reason to have an agency committed to solving poverty. But nobody will ever draw a connection between the agency that's been charged with solving the poverty problem and the fact that that agency is creating the problem or exacerbating the problem that they were supposed to solve, because the programs that they pursue end up creating more poverty. But as far as the government is concerned, that's a great outcome, because if there's a bigger problem, then it requires a bigger government solution. But the only solutions that will work are less government. In fact, there are a lot of people who on social media want to criticize me because they say, hey, Peter, all you do is point out the problems. Why don't you ever tell us the solutions? I do. Maybe these people don't really listen to what I have to say, but my solutions never involve another government agency or another government program. I have free market solutions to government-created problems. And those solutions always involve getting the government out of the way. So I explain how a government program is creating a particular problem and how the free market will solve that problem if the government gets out of the way. But nobody in government understands this, and it's quite clear if you look at the proposals so far that are being floated around to deal with this inflation problem, particularly as it relates to gasoline. You have one Democrat in Congress who's got a plan called the Gas Rebate Act, and they want to give every American $100 a month to afford the higher price of gas. Now, what kind of harebrained scheme is this? Because where is the government going to get this $100 a month of extra money to send to every American? Well, they're just going to print it. They're going to get it from the Federal Reserve. They're going to run bigger deficits, which means they're going to have to create more inflation to solve the problem of too much inflation. Well, how are you going to solve an inflation problem by creating more inflation? You are not. Right? You're trying to fuel a fire. You don't want to give people more money to buy more expensive gasoline. The idea would be, if gasoline is more expensive, have consumers cut back on their consumption, buy less gasoline, find ways to economize to use less gas. That's what the free market solution is to high prices. It's find a way to cut back on consumption. But no, the government wants to give people money so they can keep consuming what's in short supply, driving the price even higher. But an even dumber proposal is for a windfall profit tax on oil companies. Some other Democrat in Congress, and I forget the name, but this guy wants to have a windfall profit tax of 50% on any of the excess profits that oil companies are earning because of these higher oil prices. And I'm not really sure like what oil price they're going to consider, maybe whatever the oil price was before the invasion of the Ukraine and whatever it happens to be. And that increase in the price of oil, any profits that are attributed to that, 50% of them are going to go in a tax. And then the government will use that revenue to send out checks to American families so they have more money to buy more expensive gas. Now, at least in theory, that plan isn't purely inflationary because the government's not going to get the money from the Federal Reserve. It's going to get the money from oil companies. But if you want more oil, if oil prices are high because we don't have enough oil, the last companies you'd want to tax are the oil companies, because if we're going to get more oil, where's it going to come from? It's going to come from the oil companies. Well, where are the oil companies going to get the money to develop oil, to develop alternative sources of oil from their profits? Well, if we tax their profits, if we diminish their profits, then we diminish the capacity of oil companies to make the investments in exploration and development that would increase the supply of oil. So we're actually adding to the problem by making it more difficult from the only people in the country who are capable of producing more oil, making it less likely that they will by making it more difficult by depriving them of their resources, but also sending them the wrong kind of message. We're sending a message, hey, don't bother to invest in oil and gas exploration, because if your investments pay off and you get a big profit, well, we're just going to take it away with a windfall profit tax. So why take the risk if the government is going to confiscate the reward? But also, on the flip side of it, you're not only taxing the people who you need to produce more oil, but you're giving more money to oil consumers so that they won't have to cut back on consumption. So the government is incentivizing demand for oil while discouraging an increase in supply of oil, doing the opposite of what the free market would do. In a free market, when the price goes up, what signals are sent to the market? Consumers are told, use less, the price is high, economize, find alternatives. The message that producers get is prices are high, pump more, find more oil, drill for more oil, right? That's the message that the market sends, and that message works because it results in lower prices. But what message is the government sending with its taxes and its subsidies? It's telling people not to cut back on their consumption, keep buying expensive oil, here's the money to keep buying it. And the government tells oil companies, don't increase your production because we're just going to tax your profits away. In fact, you're going to increase your taxes right now. So even if you want to increase production, we're taking away the money that you would need to do it, right? Completely the wrong thing you should do. And it's not just on Capitol Hill where you have these boneheaded ideas. You have the same thing in the States. Look at what California wants to do. They've come up with this brilliant idea. Governor Newsom wants to give every Californian a debit card loaded up with $400 that individual can use to buy gas. And in fact, the debit cards are tied to automobile ownership. So for each car you own, you get a debit card. Now, it's a maximum of 2 per household, but of course, if you're a single guy and happen to have 2 cars, I guess you can get $800. But supposedly the money is to be used to buy gas, but I guess in theory, it can be used to buy anything. The same as those $100 a month checks that the U.S. government wants to send out. They say it's for gas, but of course, you could use the money for anything. And of course, any money that you get to spend on gas, that means it frees up money to spend on anything else. So the inflation is just generally spread throughout the economy. It's not localized to gas, but it is increasing demand. But again, California is incentivizing the wrong thing. They are giving people more money to buy gas instead of allowing the higher price to discourage people from buying gas and economizing. But again, where is California going to get all this money to give everybody 400 or 800 bucks? And there's no means testing. There's no income threshold. I mean, the billionaires in California are going to get their $400 debit cards too. But where is the money coming from? They're not raising taxes. So California is going to go deeper into debt, which means they are going to be loading up their residents with even more debt, which is going to have to be repaid in the future out of higher taxes. It makes no sense. And as California has to keep raising taxes because they're deeper and deeper in debt, more taxpayers are going to leave the state.